and welcome to the latest webinar in our series of presentations designed to help Kansas companies expand their exports. Today we have a spotlight on Southeast Asia. My name is Jeff Willis, and I am the Director of the International Division here at the Kansas Department of Commerce. I'll be your MC for today's event. I will also kick off the substantive portion with a brief account of Kansas business with Southeast Asian countries, as well as a short discussion about our recent trade mission to Thailand and Vietnam. I'll then introduce our speakers for today's webinar. They both work for the U.S. Commercial Service and will offer well-informed perspectives that I'm sure you'll find useful as you consider your options regarding market entry or market expansion into the countries of Southeast Asia. Before we begin, I want to inform everyone that this session will be recorded and will be accessible via our website once it has been posted. We also look forward to any questions you may have, so please don't hesitate to post them at any time in the chat box. Towards the end of the program, we will go over your questions and hopefully have some good answers for you. So again, don't hesitate to pose your questions at any time in the chat box. Let's first look at some statistics that help put Kansas exports to the region into perspective. In 2021, the last full year for which we have statistics, Kansas exports to all worldwide destinations totaled $12.6 billion US. To put things in context, Mexico was our top export destination with $2.7 billion of Kansas products, both merchandise as well as commodity, ending up in that country. Our top Southeast Asian export destination is Singapore, which received $320 million in Kansas exports. It ranked 8th in 2021 in terms of overall exports from the state. And in terms of goods going into Singapore, they top out with aircraft and parts at number 1, electric machinery at number 2, and then industrial machinery in the second position. So it gives you a little bit of an idea about the composition of at least the top export categories into Singapore. Now, next in line is Vietnam, to which Kansas exported $112 million worth of goods. Vietnam represents our 16th largest export market. Now, as far as Vietnam is concerned, the top export product into Vietnam was food industry residues. Raw hides and skins came in at number 2, and oil seeds at number 3. So you can see the composition is a little bit different from what is going into Singapore. Next, Vietnam is followed by Malaysia, which saw a small downturn in 2021, such that it fell behind Vietnam to become our 17th largest export destination and came in at $107 million. Malaysia, also dairy products topped the list going there. Aluminum and articles thereof were in the number 2 slot, followed up by oil seeds as well. Then we got the Philippines coming in at the 18th position. You can see these Southeast Asian countries are ranked bam, bam, bam right after each other. Philippines comes in at the 18th position and is the 4th largest Southeast Asian export market for Kansas, with $94 million of Kansas goods hitting their shores. And in terms of the Philippines, we're looking at aircraft and parts as the number 1 export commodity product. And then we've got food industry residues and dairy products rounding out the top 3 list. Indonesia is the 5th largest Southeast Asian market at position 19 for the state, with $88 million worth of Kansas exports going there. Meat and edible meat offal were in the top slot. Aircraft and parts came in at number 2, and then food industry residues at number 3. And then just covering the 6 largest markets for us, the others, Brunei and Burma, et cetera, are on the chart, but they fall way down low. So I'm just going to cover the top 6. And the 6th largest export market in Southeast Asia for Kansas goods in Thailand is Thailand, where in 2021, Kansas companies exported approximately $70 million worth of goods. Thailand occupies the 24th largest market position for our exports. And products going there, oil seeds, aircraft and parts, and industrial machinery. Well, as I mentioned in the intro, we just came back from a 10-day trip to Thailand and Vietnam. The focus of our mission was equipment sales related to aquaculture production. Make no mistake, shrimp and tilapia farms are found throughout the region and continue to grow in number to support both the local demand for protein as well as the international market for these foods. You're going to hear more from our other two presenters about Southeast Asian markets and opportunities, so I'm not going to go into any great detail about that in my remarks. Rather, I thought I would give you a little heads up about the post-pandemic situation as it relates to testing, masks, and quarantines. Basically, if you've been fully vaccinated or test negative right before your arrival, you should not have any hangups. For both Thailand and Vietnam, no post-arrival quarantine was required for anyone meeting one of these two criteria. I did have to wear a mask in the airplane from Bangkok to Hanoi, but was not required to do so in either airport or generally in the cities. Still, I think it's best that one always carries a mask, even if you don't think you need one, just to make sure you're in compliance with any new regulations that may arise during your trip. You should also be sure to carry your proof of vaccination if you have that. The other point I wanted to make about our recent trade mission is that it was supported by STEP, the State Trade Expansion Program, with funds provided to us by the SBA. We've been successful in securing STEP funding for the last several years and have money available this year as well to support both market entry as well as market expansion activities. So as you listen to the rest of the program, know that we can provide support for eligible Kansas companies to help defray some of the costs associated with trade mission registration as well as airfare. My colleague, Mr. Chang Liu, who goes by Liu, who is on this webinar, is our program manager for the STEP program. He can go into further detail about our program and would enjoy talking with you about how we can manage the program. Now, our first guest speaker today is Jim Mayfield. Jim is the director of the U.S. Export Center in Orange County, California. Jim joined the U.S. Export Assistance Center in Irvine, California in 2012 and became the director in 2014. He's responsible for leading a team of international trade specialists to advise and assist Orange County area companies with all aspects of their global export strategies. His current client portfolios include aerospace, safety and security, professional services, energy, and environmental technologies. Prior to joining the Irvine office, Jim served as the principal commercial officer with the U.S. Consulate General in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam from 2009 to 2012, as deputy senior commercial officer in Hong Kong from 06 to 09, and before that as a commercial officer in Shanghai, China in 2001 to 2004. And so with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Jim Mayfield, who will begin, as I say, some of the substantive presentation from the U.S. Commercial Service. Thank you, Jim. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks for the invitation to join. I apologize about the lighting not being optimal in my current setup here, but I think we all kind of know how that goes. Thank you to you and your team for including myself and my colleague Dan to join your presentation today. This is an area that both Dan and I are really passionate about, and we'd love to see if we can engage with your community there to see how we can support your efforts and hopefully grow sales in what I think is a really dynamic and really interesting region. I know that my colleague AJ Anderson there in Wichita really values his partnership with you and your department, and we just really appreciate the opportunity to participate. And on a personal note, Jeff, it's great to reconnect with you after all these years of working on different projects in Asia. So thanks for that. My colleague Dan Kim, who is our global team leader for Asia, will deliver the more substantive perspectives about opportunities for companies in the region. But I wanted to start things off by just providing a little bit of a snapshot about the U.S. Commercial Services footprint, a little bit about us in case you don't already know us. So Dan, if I could flip to the next slide, please. So in a nutshell, I work for the U.S. Department of Commerce. We're a federal government agency. In fact, we're a very small division within the Commerce Department, and we're focused on exports. Our organization exists to help primarily small businesses export American-made products and services all around the world. We do that in several different ways. We offer a number of services and a number of programs. We put those services into 4 or 5 different buckets, which are listed here on the screen. So for example, in my area, my team spends a significant percentage of our time advising companies on all aspects of exporting, troubleshooting individual business deals, educating and training some of our clients on different facets of the export process, and then trying to assemble all of the resources that are needed to develop and execute an export transaction, from identifying financing, distribution, getting our clients pointed in the right direction with legal advice, getting them connected with experts in various fields to help them navigate whatever issues might come their way. There's some compliance issues there that we need our clients to be aware of. And then there's also just so much information out there, and we often just serve as maybe a GPS to navigate all of the different sources, different channels, and different things that people are hearing and saying about opportunities around the world. So we're primarily a resource, and we spend a lot of our time in what we would call our export counseling. I won't go into all of the different buckets, but I just wanted to kind of emphasize, or maybe share a little bit of the kinds of things that we do. I did want to draw your attention to the third bullet, which is what we call matchmaking. And I would say this is one of the things that our organization does very well, and it's not easily replicated with other organizations that are out there. We have teams on the ground in over 80 countries to help U.S. exporters identify potential distributors, sales partners, customers in some cases, and essentially set up those sales channels so that your business is not just a one-off sale, but really you're developing a sustainable pathway to enter whatever market you're focused on. And we would tap into our overseas offices in order to help you set up that pathway. And then, of course, troubleshoot all of the different issues that come up along the way. Next slide, please, Dan. So this is our US footprint. So no matter where you are in the country, we hope that you're relatively close to one of our export assistance centers. As I mentioned, my colleague AJ in Wichita is probably your local point of contact. But of course, you can touch base with any of us if you have different divisions of your companies, or you've got friends or colleagues in other states. They can plug in and connect with us. And the easiest way to find us is go to trade.gov and plug in your zip code, and you can find the local export assistance center that's nearest you. I'm in Southern California. I'm in Irvine, and my territory is Orange County. My colleague Dan is in Chicago. So we're all over the U.S. Wherever essentially we're trying to position ourselves close to business communities, industrial communities, so that we can be a point of contact for companies that are looking to go global. Next slide, please. Now, this is really sort of the gist of our value position in our world. And so this is our global footprint. So no matter where you're going in the world, we have an office that's close by, and in most cases, in most of the major markets that we're targeting, we've got offices in country, and in some cases, in larger markets, like Brazil, for example, we've got multiple offices in that market. And the way our overseas offices work is that they are located inside the U.S. embassies and consulates where we operate. We've got teams of American commercial officers who are rotating every 2 to 4 years, essentially managing our operations and being that American trade diplomat in the embassy community. But we also employ local national staff from each country. And these are our permanent staff who are full-time on the ground, in many cases, specialists in different industries who are our tremendous resources for helping companies troubleshoot those issues in country and develop those market entry strategies. So what we're hoping to do is be that local point of contact in the US, and then tap into our global network to help our clients navigate and identify where those opportunities might be. And then once they've identified them, to try to find strategies to implement and make those sales. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to my good colleague, Dan, who's going to share his perspectives on opportunities in Asia as our global team leader. So Dan, I'll turn it over to you, and then I'll jump back in before we conclude, and I'll be available for Q&A. Before I pass the microphone, I did want to mention, though, this is a tremendous region. It's got all kinds of interesting opportunities, and I'm excited to hear what Dan has to say.
Well, before we listen to Dan, I'd like to introduce him with a brief bio rendering as well. So Dan is the Global Asia Team Leader, as you heard from Jim earlier, for the U.S. Department of Commerce. Dan promotes Asia as an export destination and coordinates resources and outreach on exporting to Asia for the U.S. Commercial Service across 16 markets. He's also a participant on several industry teams, including advanced manufacturing, transportation, logistics services, and plastics. Prior to joining the Commerce Department, Dan worked for the South Korean government agency, the Korea Trade Promotion Investment Agency, KOTRA, and there he specialized in connecting international small, medium-sized enterprises to major corporations with extensive experience in automotive, commercial, pharmaceuticals, medical, and industrial applications. Well, fantastic. Dan, I'd like to now turn the program over to you to address some of the specific stuff you want to talk about relative to Southeast Asia. Thank you.
And Jeff, thank you for that great introduction. Super glad to be here and able to share some information about sort of the overall market forecast and on some of the opportunities and why you should be looking at Asia as an export destination. So the Asian tiger is a term for the rising economic powers of Asia, which historically was the 4 East Asian tigers in Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, and Taiwan. But with the rise of commerce and business throughout Asia, and in particular Southeast Asia, I think looking at the region as a whole and calling it the Asian tiger is appropriate. There are many opportunities throughout Asia, and the U.S. Commercial Service is here to assist. I want to highlight that even with COVID considerations, exports from the U.S. to many parts of Asia actually increased from 2020 to 2021. So Asia is the world's largest and fastest growing region. By 2030, 65% of the world's middle class population will be in Asia, and by 2050, Asia will be 60% of the world's total population. We always tell people you should be exporting because 95% of the world's consumers are outside of the United States. And as you see, Asia is a place to be. Asia, less China, has 16 cities with a population greater than 10 million, and followed by China and Europe with 6 each, and then South America with 2. There are none in North America. Sorry. There is also a very strong emerging middle class in Asia as well, and a large concentration of wealth. With 2 billion people in the middle class, and an estimated 3.5 billion by 2030, this market presents an opportunity. 95% of the world's consumers are outside the US, and many of them are located in Asia. The middle class is estimated to grow from 54% in 2020 to 65% in 2030 of the world's total middle class, which is quickly outpacing other markets. So the first opportunity for Asia I'd like to highlight is infrastructure. And under that umbrella, I'll talk about transportation, energy, and environmental technologies. Asia will account for approximately 55% of the total global infrastructure spend by 2025. According to the International Energy Agency, the Indo-Pacific will account for approximately 60% of the total global increase in primary energy demand by 2040. In developing and emerging countries in Asia alone, according to the Asian Development Bank, this will require over $1 trillion in energy infrastructure investment annually. When it comes to transportation and aerospace, Boeing anticipates the region will account for 41% of all new passenger airplane deliveries over the next 20 years. The diversity of the markets, some developed, some primed for rapid growth, and some requiring significant infrastructure investments, represent many opportunities for U.S. businesses. From commercial aircraft, air traffic management systems, and airport development the region offers opportunities for significant export growth. And I know that this is a great space that Kansas has a very strong economy and developed system and companies too as well that could meet these needs. There is also increased demand and development of highways and growth in spending in personally owned automobiles, again, tied to that growing middle class, as well as expansion in rail. Asia has significant opportunities for U.S. exporters of cybersecurity technology and related services, data center and storage hardware and services, telecommunication technology, and the need is only increasing. Many ASEAN countries have strong smart city visions with multi-year plans for 5G and ICT integration, and you see a lot of this drive from Southeast Asia. You can see with the quick adoption of emerging technologies like 5G, new and emerging technologies are strongly encouraged and adopted. Also, free trade agreements with Korea and Singapore encourage trade with US firms and fosters an environment for a healthy and favorable landscape for exporters. Data shows 22 of the top 25 cybersecurity firms were based in the United States, and their ancillary services and companies with experience provides an opportunities for US companies. With the increasing middle class, you also have an aging population. There is a growing demand for healthcare, with 500 million people over 65 by 2025. A Bain & Company report indicates that Asia will represent 40% of growth in global healthcare demand. There is a high demand for medical devices, especially for aging population in developed markets like Japan and South Korea. At the same time, markets like Malaysia are looking at hospital modernizations and healthcare information technology solutions. Asians are quick to adopt new technologies in this area too, with 50% preferring a digital delivery service with a single point of contact that's outside the hospital. Now, there are some challenges to the Asian market, including low-cost competition, as well as market access issues and lack of experience. But that's where you can leverage resources like the U.S. Commercial Service. Also, it will be difficult to compete on a cost basis, but where I've personally seen U.S. companies really succeed in the market is by beating on quality, technology, and entrepreneurship. The three sectors I highlighted, infrastructure, ICT, and healthcare, are areas where there is a high demand for U.S. goods and services because of the interest in high quality, innovative products and goods. And a lot of times, these areas are not directly tied to costs, especially when you have something new and are bringing something first to market. You can dictate the terms. U.S. companies can also be more flexible, leveraging things like Exim Bank to provide payment terms on goods, as well as partnering in country on new technologies and providing customized solutions. Now, these next slides are snapshots into Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but from what I understand, these slides will be shared, and I'll be more than happy to make these slides available, and you can review the information after today. I'll also share my contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. In the case of Indonesia, they're actually planning to establish a completely new capital city that's began construction this year, which represents an opportunities in infrastructure, as well as an overall government-led initiative in improving their manufacturing. Opportunities where U.S. companies can present innovative solutions, as well as opportunities in digitalization and agriculture. Right now, actually, there are just 2 trade missions led by the U.S. Department of Commerce in Indonesia. One is advanced manufacturing, and the other is in aerospace and defense, and both of them are having outstanding results. So Indonesia is a great economy that many of you should be looking at, a great market that many of you should be looking at to do business in. Vietnam is also a booming market with as I said earlier, the fastest growing middle class and affluent class in Southeast Asia, with consumers who are eager to consume U.S. products. This middle class is also driving increased demand for high quality healthcare, infrastructure, and services. And in recent years, the country has enacted decrees to increase oversight over the medical device sector. Key sectors would be healthcare, energy, aviation, and smart cities ICT as they look to modernize their infrastructure. And with Thailand, you see many sectors identified as best prospect sectors. Thailand is a growing destination for U.S. agricultural exports due to the expanding economy, increasing consumer incomes, changing lifestyles, and the growing vibrant tourism industry. Thailand's processed food industry is growing rapidly and relies on imported ingredients for food and feed production. With Thailand centrally located in ASEAN, Southeast Asia, it benefits from the increasing number of tourists and foreign investors as international travel resumes. Thailand continues to invest in expansions of several major airports, including BKK, DMK, Phuket, Chiang Mai, and Chiang Rai. Airports of Thailand is expected to invest about $11.5 billion to increase airport capacity over the next 9 years. Since U.S. healthcare firms and manufacturers have a strong reputation for quality, after-sales service, and training support, very much similar to how all U.S. products are seen as well, they are well positioned to assist Thailand in fulfilling needs in the medical equipment sector too as well. And I'm going to hand it back to Jim because there's a little slide there for trade winds, but definitely for additional information on all these sectors, feel free to to follow that link. By the way, all of this information is on these country commercial guides. That link on the bottom there is for Thailand, but definitely Jim's going to go into detail on how you can take advantage of all these opportunities next year in March. So with Jim, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, let me get my camera reactivated here. So thank you, Dan. So as Dan mentioned, my organization is organizing a very large trade delegation to Southeast Asia under the banner of Trade Winds. This is our signature annual global business development program. And essentially, we will be taking about 50 to 60 companies to Bangkok in the spring. And then from there, options to visit multiple cities throughout Southeast Asia. So Dan, if I could ask you to flip to the next slide. These are just some of the basics about our trade mission. So it is centered around a business forum, which will be held in Bangkok over 3 days, Monday to Wednesday, starting on March 13th. And that forum will include a number of networking opportunities for participants. We'll have a keynote speaker program. We will also fly in our commercial officers from about 20 different markets throughout Asia, even beyond Southeast Asia. So we will bring in our senior commercial team to Bangkok to provide customized consultations with mission participants. And mission participants will also have the chance to elect B2B matchmaking meetings with companies in Thailand who could be potential distributors or sales reps. So that's sort of the anchor program. And then from there, companies have options to join some of our mission stops before Thailand. So those options are Vietnam, Singapore, and the Philippines. Or you could elect to take mission stops after Bangkok, which are Indonesia and Malaysia. And for companies that have a very aggressive Southeast Asia expansion program, we welcome participation in any and all of the stops. You can bring multiple executives. You can pick and choose and customize your mission based on what you are looking to accomplish. All of the participants who register with us will get an initial market assessment where we will take your product information, send it to our colleagues throughout Southeast Asia. They will evaluate that, look at their network and see what they think the potential is for us to be able to put together a program for you. We'll send you that assessment back before you ultimately commit for the mission to aid in making decisions about where you'd like to go and what stops you'd like to participate in. Companies also can tap into STEP funding. I'm not quite sure exactly what the process is in Kansas, but I know that a number of states are assisting companies participate in Trade Winds by helping with some STEP grant funding. That might be a good question for the chat for Jeff. But regardless of STEP involvement or not, we try to make this an affordable market entry point. So essentially, for $2,200, companies can join the Bangkok stop and include one B2B session, whether that's in Bangkok or in any of the other cities that we're traveling. So I'll just leave it at that. We do a number of other programs, as Dan mentioned. We have several different industry-focused trade delegations that we're taking to the region at any given time. That could be in anything from ICT to advanced manufacturing to aerospace and defense to different types of agribusiness. So if it's not trade winds, going to Southeast Asia, there are multiple other avenues that we are organizing throughout the year, and we would love to be a part of your export expansion journey. So with that, maybe we'll turn it back to Jeff and open it up to see if anybody has any questions. I am remiss, we should have put AJ's contact information up there, but certainly if you wanted to connect, you could reach out to Dan or me, and we would certainly get you in touch with the right person for you to connect with in our organization. So with that, maybe over to Jeff and we can take a few questions.
Well, that's great. Before we start the question part, I just want to emphasize how important it is for companies to consider traveling to the region. And certainly the Trade Winds program is an excellent one that gives them access, as you indicated, to such expertise from the commercial officer corps within the area, all coming together to be able to help out. All of the market investigation work that you can do, the analysis beforehand to determine product suitability, which particular market might be better for one product or the other. All those things are extremely helpful. But really, at the end of the day, nothing really can replace going to the location directly. Any of us that have been involved in international sales know very well all of the extra little tidbits and ideas and inroads that you can make within a particular region once you're there. And so I highly emphasize that. And the other thing to reiterate is the fact that we do have STEP funding, and we do have STEP funding available to support this particular Trade Winds mission. We can help out with the registration costs that were talked about early on. I think we have up to $3,000 to be able to support in that area. And my colleague Chang Lu, who is on this call, is our staff member who addresses that program, manages that program for us, and does a great job. We can also help support some of the transportation costs. So just don't hesitate to contact our office. You can talk to Lou directly. You can talk to me. You can go in through any number of ways. And of course, I have contact information available for AJ Anderson here in the Q&A box, as well as Josh Kaplan, who is in Kansas City, and both they are both the U.S. Commercial Service representatives for those areas, and help Kansas companies to be able to connect up not only with Dan and with Jim and with the Trade Winds program, but for the whole range of program activities that are supported by the U.S. Commercial Service. And lastly, I think Jim said it quite well. We do work very closely with the offices that AJ has in Wichita, as well as Josh in Kansas City, as we all look to serve the broader export community here within Kansas. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and go to the first question that's come forward. We have a question from Terry, who asks, how do service companies like his get on the list of service providers for Southeast Asia? Perhaps I can direct that to either Jim or Dan to take that question on first. And if nobody raises their hand, I'll designate.
So it probably depends country to country. In some markets, we have a business service providers listing, essentially, where service companies who offer a certain type of expertise in that market, maybe it's a functional expertise or some kind of market strategy expertise. In many countries, we do have a business service providers listing. So that's sort of one channel, but it's country by country, and not every country has that. The second, I think, is to get to know us. Make sure that we know where your expertise is. We are frequently contacted by companies that need assistance that's beyond our expertise, and we're always looking to redirect that inquiry towards resources that will help them accomplish their goals. And so it's important for us to know who the experts are in our local communities. And so that would be something we could talk about further. We're always looking for ways to tap into our local expert communities to bring that expertise to our clients.
And I do want to highlight too that the largest export for the United States is services, the services industry. So you may be looking, if you provide a service, we can help you to connect with foreign companies too as well. If you're providing like business expertise, consulting, let's say you're providing some type of inventory management system or anything, just keep in mind that we don't just help companies with goods, because services is the biggest US export, and that's one area we help too. So you don't have to be, let's say, a business service provider looking to market your services to US companies. We can actually help you sell your services to foreign companies. So please keep that in mind too.
Well, thank you. That's great, Dan. The next question is one that I have really, and that is, if a company is interested in the TradeWinds Trade Mission program, what kinds of things do you think that, and maybe this is best oriented towards Jim, what kinds of things do you think they need to do in advance to prepare for that mission? Perhaps it's best to get on board early and start the dialogue with you folks early so that any kinds of additional support activities can be sort of programmed in before they get there. But what kinds of preparations do you think that they might want to engage in? And that can include reviewing the country commercial guide. I'm not sure what it is that you might suggest, but perhaps, Jim, you can talk about those kinds of preparations for a moment.
Yeah, and I'll also invite Dan to jump in here as well to share some of his thoughts. The first thing is to get involved early, get those assessments in process so that you can review those assessments and then start to chart your course based on where you think you have the best opportunity. We have a ton of resources out there. Jeff, you mentioned we publish a country commercial guide for almost every country where we work. Dan referenced that in his presentation. Those country commercial guides have kind of an economic overview. They outline best prospects as we see them in the region. And that's a great tool to kind of narrow down your focus and pinpoint where you think you want to really work. Working with, whether it's Josh or with AJ locally, we could then try to see what other resources we have. I also recommend companies think about staying in the region for an extra day to do follow-up. One of the biggest challenges that I think my clients have when they go on a trade mission is that they meet a tremendous number of really interesting people and great contacts. But when they get back to the States, that stack of business cards, that list of contacts sort of is in the inbox among many, many other competing priorities. And you might have met somebody who's really interesting, and maybe you just need an extra follow-up conversation or two to really understand if you might be able to work together. So I always encourage my clients to kind of plan ahead and think about where they could insert some additional time in that market to kind of do some on-the-spot follow-up as those opportunities arise. Dan, I just mentioned a few things. I don't know, Dan, if you had any other specific thoughts there.
Yeah, I do want to stress that TradeWinds is the program is first come, first serve, and it sells out every year. So because of that, I highly recommend, if you're thinking about going to TradeWinds, at least put in your application so your spot is reserved. Just because you apply does not guarantee you'll be accepted, but it will hold your spot in line, and you'll get sort of a mini initial market check from our people in country to determine whether there is a marketability for your products or services, whatever, in country. So I just want to stress again, highly recommend you go to the TradeWinds website and you apply just to get your spot in line. And things come up. We understand if you're unable to attend, if you are accepted, but at least please get your name in the system. That way we don't end up selling out and then you're interested later on and there's no more spots available.
Well, great. Those are some great tips. We did have a question come in about the initial market check, which I think is a great service offering that you folks provide. And I imagine this varies by country, but what kind of processing time should somebody expect for an initial market check? Maybe roughly across the region, and then if there's any specific country where demand is so great. I know, having been in Vietnam recently, there's a tremendous amount of interest in what's going on there. Perhaps certain countries require a little bit more time, but if you could address that, what kind of processing time should our companies expect for the initial market check?
Hey, Jeff, I'll take a crack at that. It's going to vary market to market. I'm not sure I have an average time frame. I've done one recently, I think in Central America, and I think the turnaround time was about 6 or 7 weeks. And I think it was because that particular city was a little bit on the high demand side. Some posts might be able to turn it around a little bit quicker, some a little bit longer, but I think I would kind of ballpark something like around 6 to 7 weeks to do that. And so what the initial market check is that it stops short of doing a full-blown distributor search, but it does make some initial sort of inquiries, and we do get some initial feedback from the types of companies that we think would be a good fit. And essentially, our local staff in country are going to be making calls, talking to potential distributors, just kind of getting a quick snapshot of their feedback to see if this is a product that they're interested in representing. What do they think of the prospects? What do they think about competition? And we sort of take that snapshot, we put it together into a little report called our initial market check, and that's what we present to our clients. Also, just as a side note, if you end up doing an initial market check with us, and later the prospects are such that you want to pursue a full partner search or a full, what we would call a gold key partner search, you can apply the costs of the initial market check towards that future gold key.
And I just confirmed this. So the initial market check for a small company is $350. An official IMC. A gold key service for a small company is $950, and it will be discounted to $750. So the official discount is $200, and that's in our actual manual. So you're guaranteed that discount if it goes well. On top of that, as Jim said, every market, the turnaround time on official IMCs is different. I have an IMC going on in Japan that's going to have a 3-week turnaround. In our market, I got a 2-week turnaround. In our market, it took a month and a half. So it's really market dependent. For companies that are applying for trade wins, the vetting process, I think, Jim, what's the turnaround time on those for the initial vetting?
For the initial vetting for trade wins is about 2 to 3 weeks, and in some cases.
Yeah. So apply for trade wins, you'll know in a pretty short amount of time. It's not official. It's not an official IMC where you get the report, but you'll be told whether you have good prospects or not. And I think it's worth applying if you do have an interest in the region, especially after today's presentation.
Well, great. That's all good information. It certainly seems to me that if anybody is interested in going into Southeast Asia, again, for either market entry, initial market entry, or market expansion, where they already have existing activities, but they were looking to try to expand their sales in the region, that they should perhaps consider moving fairly soon on pursuing the trade wins option, both for the vetting as well as for the initial market check activity. Because before we know it, March is gonna be here. And so the next question that I have for the presenters, and either of you can take this, does the U.S. Commercial Service organize country visits that focus on specific industries? And I know the answer to this, but I'm going to let you take it away.
Sure, we do. I would say maybe there's sort of 2 or 3 different ways we're facilitating companies to make those visits. We do sector-specific trade delegations quite frequently. Not every country is going to have delegations for every sector, but we try to focus in on the sectors that represent best prospects. So we're quite active right now with aerospace and defense programming. We've got a number of country visits and delegations that we're doing there. And then the other way we're really facilitating those country visits is more customized to specific companies. And if you're planning a visit to any country in the world, we would encourage you to check in with the commercial service office there well in advance, and maybe we can put something together for you to make your trip even more impactful, whether that's putting together some kind of partner search for you, even an initial market check, or maybe something more extensive. Or if you already have partners in the region that you're looking to investigate, we can help you with some of that due diligence. Or if you already have a presence in a market, maybe you've already got a distributor, but you're planning to go and make a visit to them, we might consider teaming up with you to do some kind of product launch or maybe a product promotion of some kind. So we're pretty flexible. Most of our work is really customized around individual companies that we're working with.
And just to highlight what Jim's saying, for the individual trade missions, usually commerce-led trade missions are industry specific. So right now, this week, there's an advanced manufacturing mission that's happening in Indonesia, Singapore, and Japan are the 3 stops. And then next week, there's going to be aerospace and defense to Indonesia as part of the Indo Defense Trade Show. With that said, the Trade Winds program is a horizontal mission, so it covers all industries. So like I said, it's a great opportunity to get over to Southeast Asia. There's multiple mission stops, as Jim said. The main forum will be in Thailand, but then there's spin-offs in Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore. I might be missing one, but it's a great way to get to the region. And especially if you're targeting multiple industries, let's say, not just aerospace, but let's say you're targeting the manufacturing industry, and then you're targeting healthcare, or I don't know. This is a great way to get to the region, especially because this one, the March one, it's a big one. It's usually executive led. There'll usually be a high level commerce person there. There's a business forum, great chance to network, as well as to learn more about sort of what's happening on a higher level when it comes to the overall region, the opportunities there, maybe like some type of potential trade barriers that you should be aware of, and how we're advocating on behalf of U.S. companies in the region.
Well, that's great. I have another question, and again, either of you can both chime in as you see fit. But this company is involved in selling into the metal fabrication industry and would like to be able to identify lists of vendors in particular countries. What do you suggest is the best vehicle for them to be able to accomplish that?
So I've run into this. So they're looking to purchase potential supplies in the region, right? Is that what you're asking?
They are selling into the metal fabrication industry,
okay,
and are looking probably to partner up with sellers in that local country of metal fabricated products.
Okay, so they're looking for potential distributors in the country.
I believe so.
Yeah, and definitely that's our bread and butter. That's what we do every day, the B2B matchmaking part. We either do that through GoKey services, which are in-person meetings, and that's where we set up a day of 3 to 5 meetings. You travel to the location of where those potential distributors or agents are. You get to see their location, their warehousing, see how their business operates, meet with them face to face. All these companies have been pre-screened by the U.S. Department of Commerce, the commercial service in country, and they know that you're coming with the U.S. Commercial service from the U.S. Embassy. So they know that you're a legitimate U.S. company with legitimate business interests, and you could be you're safe in knowing that the companies that we introduce to you are good companies, right? They know that this introduction is being supported by the U.S. government, so they're well aware of the entire process, and they're on the lookout to make sure that they have a legitimate business interest we're making sure that that meeting goes well. And that's a go-key service, right? That's sort of our bread and butter. That's what we see the most success with. If you can't make the trip to in-country, we could do an international partner search, which is provide you a list of interested companies. Of course, those have been pre-vetted. We ask the same questions. Are you interested in meeting with this U.S. company? Are you interested in their products or services, etc.? And then with a trade mission, everything usually happens in one location, so they'll come to you. It makes it a lot easier, and maybe you have a larger amount of meetings. But our bread and butter is that B2B matchmaking side, right? The go-key service and international partner searches.
Okay, well, that's great information. Here we are in 2022 in a moderately post-pandemic environment. Of course, it still is rearing its ugly head in different ways around the world, and still causing some challenge to those of us that travel internationally. But in that context, the Gold Key service and in-person visits, trade missions, etc., are wonderful vehicles to be able to gain a greater understanding of a particular market, or to be able to hook up with possible sales opportunities, or, as you said just moments ago, Dan, agents or distributors. I'm just kind of curious, are there ways in which you've integrated virtual environment work, whether it's hosting some sort of a virtual meeting between prospects and U.S. companies? Are there ways in which you've incorporated the virtual component into your work that carries on today? I know you had to do it when travel wasn't possible, but now that travel's opened up, is it still part of your retinue of offerings, or is there a way in which it works to support the travel in country? Can you just sort of briefly touch upon that, either you, Jim, or Dan?
Sure, definitely. So, as many of you know, because of COVID, many of us weren't able to do in-person visits or travel, and we've been leveraging platforms such as right here, MS Teams, Zoom, to set up virtual introductions and virtual meetings. So I touch upon the international partner search. So the international partner search is a go-key service without the in-person component, right? We provide you a list of companies that are interested in either representing your products, buying your products or services, or representing you in market. What we could do is we could do a virtual visit too as well. And you could get a lot of those initial introductions out of the way through a virtual platform like this, right? And then once the business starts going, maybe you follow that up down the line with an in-person visit. What we've been doing a lot of too is virtual programs. So if you're part of our newsletters, you'll probably know that we've done some virtual B2B matchmaking. We've used the website called My Business Matches to set that up. So there's so many programs out there that we've leveraged in a virtual environment. And what we found a lot of success is, it's good to do that initial meeting sometimes, just this way, virtually. It saves time, it saves you the trip to do sort of a face-to-face here in the virtual environment to get those introductions out of the way. But once you get a PO, once you get the business started, right, it's always good to have that in-person component. And especially in Asia, in-person is actually quite welcome. They actually encourage and they like having an in-person follow-up. Even though I've done quite a few virtual introductions like this, we always try to set up something in person down the line once the business does get going, and I usually recommend that too as well.
Well, great. That's great advice, Dan. Thank you very much. We have another question, and this, please take it away as you wish. I imagine there are a number of ways that this can be accomplished, but we have one attendee who wants to get on the notification list for any activities that you're looking to conduct in the future. Perhaps that would be to get in touch with AJ Anderson in Wichita or Josh Kaplan in Kansas City. But are there any other ways that they might be able to be put on an email distribution list or some other kind of vehicle?
So there's the general trade.gov newsletters as well as Indo-Pacific specific newsletter, although I haven't sent out an update for that in a few months. But I highly recommend, the most important takeaway you should take from this presentation should be, you really should be in touch with your local U.S. Commercial Service Office, whether it's Josh or AJ, and also your local state here with Jeff, because these are the people that will know what's going on in the exporting world, and these are the people that will get you tied into these programs, right? They'll let you know when STEP funding's available. They'll let you know when these trade missions are coming up, when there's certain trade shows that might be in industry. The most important thing is that you're building this relationship, that your local trade specialist and your local exporting ecosystem, right, knows about you, and that you're plugged into that ecosystem and you're plugged into those local resources to make sure that you're succeeding at exporting, as well as leveraging all the tools available to you. We, as the U.S. government and your local state government too, we want to see you succeed. We want to see you increase your sales to export markets and create more jobs here in the U.S., right? That's what we want you to do. And that's what we're here to help you to do with as many resources as possible. Going back to what we like to say is, companies that export are more successful. They support higher wages. They're more stable, right? Because you're diversifying your customers. You're not just selling to the domestic market. You're more insulated from singular market crashes / what's it called? The up and downs of a single economy. By diversifying your business and expanding your customer base, you're just opening yourself up to more opportunities, right? More increasing your sales, increasing the type of companies you're working with. Some companies too, you might be working into a new export market, find a new partner there that has some type of new idea that only you as a U.S. company could provide. Like I was saying, U.S. companies are competitive. The U.S. company's competitive advantage a lot of times is innovation, as well as being able to customize solutions, right? On a cost basis, if you're just pumping out widgets, it's going to be hard to compete against, Southeast Asia, China, India, other markets, right? If you're just pumping out like common widgets. But where the US is really good is at that innovation, taking something and making it better, right? Approaching problems from a new angle. And I'm seeing a lot of opportunities there. And as I said, that's where I see a lot of US companies succeed. I think it's really important that you're getting plugged in, though, as I go back to this, plugged into your local exporting ecosystem and working very closely with Josh and AJ and Jeff here. I think that, and Cheng Lu, sorry, I butchered your name just now, but it's very important that you're part of that ecosystem and you get plugged in, because those are the people that'll know about everything that's going in the exporting world.
Well, fantastic advice, Dan. And I want to, as we wrap this program up, I want to thank both of you, Dan and Jim, for coming on our program today and providing this great background information on what is clearly one of the more dynamic market areas in the world today. With the changes that have happened in terms of China, in terms of still being locked down, principally because of COVID, some of the other tariff circumstances, some of the other tensions that exist in the East Asian theater, Southeast Asia really represents some great opportunity. It's historically been a great place for U.S. business, and I think really right now it rises to the top. And so we want to make sure that people do have a chance to talk to not only us at the state. We're open all the time to be able to help Kansas companies. But if you look in the chat box, you'll see the contact information for Josh Kaplan in Kansas City, as well as AJ Anderson in Wichita. My colleague Cheng Lu, who goes by Lu, also his email is listed there. As you can see, we're all eager to be able to help you expand your exports, or if you haven't been in the market, to be able to gain that market entry. Well, I see that we're closing in on the end of our program time.